going to look at how to make the most of the SSL Big Six with a lot of its routing possibilities, and particularly focusing on what you can do with FX. Now, I have a few tracks in session view playing some stems from a track by the band Muddyloop from their recent album, which they sent to me to remix as dub versions. So I thought I'd take this opportunity because I wanted to use this workflow for the project to see how much I could get out of the SSL Big Six. Yeah, using some of my hardware effects to process the channels and create the new tracks for the new version. So in this first pass, just to show what's going on here, and you'll see I've already gone through and put little sticky labels on to tell me what's what, because otherwise you're sort of doing extra mental gymnastics which you don't really want to be doing. So I'm just flowing the tracks out of the door into the channels on the SSL Big Six. I've got drums grouped to channel 1, bass on channel 2, big knob, which is the audio merge King Tubby big knob, which is just a filter, coming in on 3. I've got my, let's call it space, as in space echo. This is a chorus echo, which is the same kind of thing, later version with the chorus added on. That's returning into channel 4. I've got what I call the skanks, which are the kind of main offbeat chords, and other instruments, big guitar and some horns coming through on that channel. Box coming in there, and DP4, that's a return channel for the stereo return of my DP4 processor. While we're looking at this, I'll just explain. I've actually got, this has 4 channels you can use in various configurations. For this demonstration, I've got 2 individual channels set up here, one with the phaser, one with the flanger, and then that's A and that's B, and then on C and D I am using this effect, tempo, delay and hall, which is a bit of a crazy kind of special effects thing. How I'm routing those in, the stereo effect is coming back in through this channel, and if I just get the Vox running on here, so that's coming, that particular effect is coming in there for when I want a bit of craziness. So that's controlled from, as it says here, DP4. I can send anything from the mixer, let's try it with the drums now on the first channel, via stereo Q2 to that effect, and then bring it back in as you can see on that channel. So stereo to the stereo Qs, we've got stereo Q1, which is going into 2 places because I'm routing it out as 2 mono sends. Basically it's a stereo send effectively, but I'm going out of there with 2 mono sends. I'm using the patch bay for this, and by the way, I should have prefaced this whole thing by saying, if you're going to do this, if you're going to get the most out of the Big Six, you need 1 patch bay. Doesn't have to be fancy. I got the Samson S Patch Plus here, which I love because it's got the normalization switches right on the front there, and it's a decent quality one without breaking the bank. So I'm using this to send and return things to different effects, and I can change that up very easy rather than going around the back of the mixer and messing with everything every time. So Yeah, going back to stereo Q1, on every channel obviously I have that Q send, and as I said, I'm going basically one side of that, kind of the left side if you like, is going to the spring reverb here. This is the Prince Fatty so-called spring reverb, made by SVA. They kind of manufacture replicas of classic equipment. In this case, the Grampian spring reverb unit, which is rare as hen's eggs and very expensive in you know, to get originals. So they redesigned the circuits in this box, and they made a special Prince Fatty version which has the addition of the filters, so you can kind of clean up basically the reverb, and you do get a lovely, let me just showcase this on the drum channel while we're playing it. So I've already got the send turned up there, and it going into that spring reverb. The return from the output, as you see here, is coming into one of the external inputs. And so to control that, to feed it back into the main mix, you have to make sure the input, which is here, external 1, is switched on, and then you bring up the, there you go. So that's the volume of the return. I'm using that as a return, FX return. So obviously you've got to be sending, control how much you send. And of course you can do just send the hits you want. So sending the snare is obviously the classic thing to do. You don't really want to be sending the whole channel the whole time, because you get that. It can be useful sometimes to get that big boom on the bass, but it turns it into something a bit different. I prefer to just go, and you get that big wet slap of a spring reverb. So that's that guy. And again, staying with stereo Q1, I'm also using that. Just turn the spring return off. I'm using that to send. Remember, we've got 2 mono channels going out. I'm using that to send the other mono channel on Q1 is sending here. As you can see, the drum channel is already sending, so it's bouncing that needle in the VU meter. And when I show you here, if you recall at the start, the space echo is coming back in on its own channel. So the camera's slightly in the way, but that's the chorus echo doing its magic. So yeah, I think that's you can see I've got that labeled spring and space, and you're probably asking, well, if you're still using one send to go to 2 different effects, how do you control when you're applying one or the other effect? Well, the answer to that is obviously you can't do it from the send state. If you had 2 mono sends, great. You don't, you have 1 stereo send. So sending to both at the same time. So the way you control it is on the return. So when you want only some spring coming back on a channel, I can keep the space turned down and just hit the there's 2 ways you can use the volume, or you can leave the volume up, Unity say, and punch it in and out. Same thing, when you leave that off, you can play with just the space. Or if you want to run both, so at the moment both returns are on, so every time I send a signal I'm getting a blast of both the spring coming in here and the chorus echo coming up here. So that covers stereo Q1 and how I've split it into 2 effects units. Stereo Q2, as we said before, is running to the DP4 and it's running to the 3rd and 4th unit as a stereo effect. So this is a lot simpler because all we're doing is sending in stereo to one a stereo effect and bringing it back on a stereo channel as one stereo effect. And obviously we can do the same for all the channels we've got coming in, whether it's drums, bass, skanks, horns, vox, whatever. So that's a stereo cues. So we've got 2 mono, 1 stereo. You can of course do the same to stereo Q2 as I did with 1 and split it into 2 mono sends. So you could have 4 effects going out and coming back in. The issue is you need somewhere for them to come back in, and at the moment, as you can see, I've already maxed it out and I've got minimal original stem tracks coming in. Drums, bass, what have we got? Skanks, horns and vox, that's 5. You know, you could sacrifice one of those, maybe say put horns and gits all together on the skanks, and then you free up an extra stereo channel. But that's the one thing, you do run into limitations, but even then, as you can see, there's a lot you can do. There's a lot you can do before you get there. So we've covered stereo cues. Let's look at the inserts. Now I think these drums sound okay at the moment, but they sound a lot better when I press this insert button. And that's because the drums on insert 1 is this bad boy with overdrive on. Really dirty, classic distortion. I love it on drums. And also what I like about this is it's got a filter, so you can kind of use it as an additional effect. Listen to that, what it does to the high frequencies in the drums, that shaker. A little bit of a filter effect. And there it comes back, nice and fizzy. So that's just the insert on 1. You can run anything you want in that. But I like Culture Vulture patched in there for drums. Let's bring in the bass. Pretty fat, sounds good. Nice bass, classic dub bass. Again, sounds good now, but let's put the insert on. Everything just got a bit fatter, rounder and warmer. Why? Because that one is going through the distressor. Just messed around with the settings, haven't been too scientific, just till it gets to sounding pretty good. Let's bring the drums back in. Now you can hear how we're starting to build the foundation of this track. We've got our first 2 inserts running. We've got ready to play with these effects. Love that. And now let's bring in the horns. And the guitar you heard there. All right, so you can hear the horns coming in, and that's the affected sound. Is, remember, is coming back in through the space channel here. That's why, even though I've got the fader down on the channel, that fader is just for the incoming, if you like, dry signal, original. Every time I hit the, it's coming in this channel. You've got to kind of remember that, but anyway. And of course, the spring. You've got to remember that both of those are active when you hit stereo Q1 in this particular instance. Now, the reason I want to get the horns going a bit is to illustrate what we've got going on with the big knob. So basically, the big knob input, how I'm sending to that is via the bus B bus, whatever they call it. So there's as well as the main output here, there is a secondary or a B bus output, and the way it works is everything you mute is sent automatically to that bus. Now normally, if you're not taking a signal from the bus, from the outputs at the back, that kind of secondary mix, then that's fine, all you're doing is muting the channels. But in this instance, what I'm doing when I mute, sending it to bus B, which as I said is patched into the big knob. And so that is returning, just like the space is returning to this channel, that one's returning to this mono channel. So when I turn it up, you can now hear it. It's the horns coming in via the big knob. Now, that signal I can of course send to either of my returns, and I love doing this because I think particularly with horns, using that filtered, almost nasal kind of sound really is a core part of what I like in the sort of classic dub tracks. There, you can hear it now coming. Once you add a bit of spring reverb, bit of delay, that really filtered sound, hard. So there you are. I think we've covered all the cues, the inserts, the bus routing for an additional kind of insert effect, insert on a bus, I guess. And of course, there's one more thing that's built into the SSL Big Six, which is the insert, which I've already applied here. And that, for now, is going into the Fusion. And that's just got various like tonal and textural kind of things going on to add to the overall mix and glue it back together. And then also from CVA here, I've got his remake of the TG style limiter, which is an insert on the Fusion. Now I haven't set this up yet, it's just set to limit. Just going to tone down the settings a little bit. So there we go. Nice.